Welcome to today's webinar, Why Now is a Great Time to Invest in Quality. Here, the financial perspective, sponsored by ETQ. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief for Quality Digest, and your host for today's webinar. With supply chain and inflation challenges lingering and a recession looming, you may be wondering why this is a good time to buy anything except maybe a way to escape it all. Well, the truth is, smart investments are still being made in solutions that help mitigate these economic headwinds. The C-suite should invest now in solutions such as an advanced QMS that reduces cost, increases efficiency, and provides significant return on investment. So today we're going to learn what investments finance departments are now willing to make and why, how an advanced QMS reduces cost, increases efficiency, and provides a compelling ROI, how to approach, finance, and win approval for a QMS purchase, real ROI that organizations have realized from a QMS, and how to conduct your own analysis, and we'll learn a lot more as well. But before we get started, just a reminder that you can send us questions using the Q&A box. You can find the Q&A button down there at the bar down there at the bottom of your screen. Just mouse down, you'll see a little pop-up. Just click that green Q&A button and send us your questions as you think of them, and we will answer them after the presentation. A recording of this webinar will be available one day after the webinar, about 24 hours from now, and you will get an email with that information from Quality Digest. Also, if you need a certificate of attendance, you will need to answer one of the polling questions presented during the webinar. Okay, let's get started. Our presenters today are Rick Russo, CFO at ETQ, and David Isaacson, Vice President of Product Marketing at ETQ. David has more than 25 years of experience in software product marketing and product management. He has successfully brought software as a service products to market for a variety of industries and high growth companies. He has worked for software companies such as Anaqua, VFA Accruent, and Oracle, where he led the product management team responsible for integrating analytics into the Oracle database. Rick Russo is responsible for finance, accounting, strategy, and M&A activities at ETQ. Prior to joining the company, Rick served at Epicor Software as Senior Vice President and Chief Accounting Officer and VP of Finance. Previously, he held various financial positions, including Senior Director of Corporate FP&A at Selectron Corporation, a global electronics manufacturing company. Rick holds a Bachelor's of Science in Accounting from the State University of New York at Brockport. And David, I believe you are starting us off.
I am. Thank you, Dirk, and I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar. We're excited to see everybody on the call here. Rick and I will go through exactly what Dirk described. We'll talk about, why this is a good time to actually think about investing, some of the value you can get out of a quality management system, how to work with your finance folks to justify an investment. And so we'll go through a few of those topics. Before we get there, and before I turn it over to Rick to take us through a little bit more detail here, I'd like just to give a quick introduction of ETQ. We are a company that has been dedicated to quality management for the past 30 years. We really focus on helping our customers identify the best way to bring products to market more competitively and using quality as that driver. We have a solution, it's called ETQ Reliance, that is a cloud native product that allows your users to access quality management anytime, anywhere, through any device. We have, as I said, 30 years of experience. We have tens of hundreds of thousands of customers, users who rely on ETQ every day for their quality management. And what's really great is that it is completely cross-industry from the support perspective, where our customers share best practices with each other, and we can take advantage of those best practices as we help the next customer who becomes a customer with us. So it's really the ability to provide that extraordinary, fantastic customer experience with all of the support and all the resources that we bring to bear, both internally and within our customer base. And speaking of the customer base, just to give you an example of some of the customers who take advantage of ETQ and the over 600 customers today that rely on our product, ETQ Reliance, for quality management, you'll see industries such as manufacturing, life sciences, pharmaceuticals, electronics, and so forth. So it is a very broad set of different industries. And as I said, that allows us to really take advantage of learnings in different industries and cross-share them, because you're not restricted to any single industry and understanding. It really helps drive quality management forward for a lot of our customers. So now let's start to talk about the value of the QMS and why this is not a bad time to invest, and it might actually be the right time to invest in a quality management system. We have gone out into the industry and we interviewed a lot of our customers who use the ETQ QMS on a day-to-day basis. And we were looking for where they saw the value. And we did this through a third party, Hobson and Company, who focuses on looking at return on investment. And what they identified were 4 key areas where a quality management system really adds value. It's reducing the risk of noncompliance, saving time, for example, on audits, and reducing the number of audit findings. Having that information at your fingertips that you need during an audit gives those auditors a real comfort level that you know what you're doing. Streamlining operations, where you're able to react more effectively and more productively when problems come in, when customer complaints are identified, when you have a supplier and you need to do inspections on the materials that are being received, on supplier corrective actions across the board. A lot of improvement in terms of just the number of hours and the number of people who need to be involved in addressing the different quality management issues that might arise. Both of those really focus on time spent and the level of effort in addressing each of those areas. The third area that we saw was more on the hard cost. So we're talking about improvements in scrap and reworking materials. We're talking about fewer field recalls. We're talking about reducing inventory carrying costs. These are hard costs that get identified. And in addition, when you get a QMS like you have with ETQ Reliance, you're able to span the globe and support all of your quality users from a single system that gets tailored to their individual needs. And therefore, you don't need as many different quality management systems. And we have a lot of customers who have been able to reduce the number of systems that they have, thereby reducing their IT spend as well. And then finally, we look at how do we grow and protect revenue? And that would be through, obviously, improved customer satisfaction. Happy customers buy more, and word of mouth and social media allow that message to be taken even to a broader audience. And then finally, reducing the time spent bringing a product to market, so that new product introduction can get you to market faster. And every month you can get to market sooner, that's revenue that you can never recover. Now, it's just not enough to say these are the areas where our customers are seeing value. In this research, we were actually able to measure the improvements in those different areas. So across those 4 major areas, you can see on the audit side, 20% reduction in time spent planning and reporting audits. On streamlining operations, 15% reduction in time spent managing supplier deliveries. In terms of reducing costs, this is where you can get some pretty significant savings. For example, just a 3% reduction in scrap costs can turn into hundreds of thousands of dollars for many organizations. And then finally, you can see an increase in the revenue and the reduction in time to get to market. So across all of these areas, we've been able to see real improvement in both the top line and the bottom line. And that's what a CFO really likes to hear about. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the ETQ CFO, Rick Russo to take us into the next part of the presentation. Over to you, Rick.
Thank you, David, and hello to everybody joining us on the call today. Today, I'm going to share some thoughts regarding the current state of the economy, the different paths companies can choose to take during a downturn, and how CFOs evaluate requests for investments. So let's start with the current state of the economy. I'm sure most attendees on this call have 401k accounts or investment accounts, and they follow the financial markets and the news closely. And we're all probably hearing the same things. Namely, the economy is currently sending mixed signals. On one hand, we're seeing positive signs with regards to job creation and unemployment figures, as well as decreasing supplier lead times. However, negative economic signs are starting to weigh heavily. The stock market is widely considered to be a leading economic indicator for the next 6 to 9 months of economic expectations. And most of the major indices are down between 15 to 25% year to date. Nearly half of all the companies in the S&P reported during the last quarter and mentioned the word recession during the last earnings call. Inflation continues to run at decade high levels, and the GDP has declined for the first 2 quarters of this year. So the debate continues about whether we're in a recession, but there is no debate that a recession will occur again, and after which there will be a recovery. So next slide. When faced with a downturn, companies need to make a decision as to whether they want to survive or whether they want to thrive. So these are just a couple pictures here, but you get the point of what we're trying to say. So on the next slide, David, let's drill into what companies that survive typically do. So we've all seen this drill. Companies that survive tend to cut costs, delay projects, and raise prices. And these actions come with consequences to the company's brand, employee morale, and financially, these actions don't guarantee that a company will kind of quote unquote hit the numbers. And these companies are then not prepared to come back strong as the economy recovers. So on the other hand, on the next slide, other companies choose to invest during a downturn. And the payoff of these ongoing investments is these companies become operationally superior by optimizing business processes, upgrading their technology stacks, and getting new products prepared to go to market. And the result is these companies are more prepared for growth, and they have higher overall customer satisfactions. Investments include projects such as things that are inflation hedges. These are things that create automation, process improvement, and other efficiencies. Improving relationships and connectivity with strategic suppliers and customers, and upgrading systems and accelerating their digital transformations. These investments result in improved efficiencies and competitiveness, reduced cost base moving forward, better brand image, and better employee morale. Moving to the next slide, I think it's safe for us to all assume and agree that investing is a much better path. So, how do CFOs typically evaluate investment requests? And I'm going to go through a series of items that they consider. First, they consider the category or the nature of the request. It may be a replacement project. It may be something that's contractual or legally required. It could be a project that supports growth or enables productivity, or it may relate to the development of new products or new markets. They'll also consider the strategic fit. Is it a project that aligns with the company's needs and overall strategy for the next several years? Non-strategic investments may yield a great return. However, they could detract attention and resources from the company's core business. Then they will review the financial business case. This is something that most companies' finance departments typically will assist the business in creating. Now, these are your typical or classic cost benefit or return on investment analysis. Business cases typically include revenue growth and or cost reduction assumptions. These are the items in many cases that David just reviewed on the previous slide. And the returns that they get from these investments will need to justify the cost of the investment. And this is where the CFOs tend to dig in. They'll need to make an assessment as to their confidence level in achieving the business case. They'll test the major assumptions of the business case. We talked about hard savings before. Hard savings always tend to carry more weight than soft savings. And they'll compare with and without cases to assess just how accretive this investment really is. Cash flow is always a consideration. That's part of the business case. Even if a business case makes sense from a financial and strategic perspective, it also must be affordable from a cash flow perspective. There's also the risk of not making an investment, such as, it involves safety concerns or the ability to comply with regulations. And finally, a CFO will view projects against alternative investments. Both financial and human capital resources are limited. Therefore, not all projects can be approved. As a result, investments are competing against other investments for priority. And typically, the most strategic projects offering the best financial outcome will win out. Like I said earlier, developing a business case is typically something the finance department will assist you with. Because this is such a common requirement, we've also developed an ROI tool that aids in this process. And at this point, I'd like to turn it back over to David, and he'll discuss our ROI tool a little bit, as well as some business cases. David?
Thanks, Rick. There are a lot of considerations that a CFO goes through and the finance department goes through when looking at an investment. Now, as Rick said, we've actually developed what we call an ROI calculator that can help our customers understand the investment case for a quality management system. And I showed you some of those statistics and the savings that we identified through the study. And we actually built a tool based upon the information that we heard. So here's an example of the output that comes from that, where this is a chemical manufacturer. This is an actual customer of ETQs. They had a revenue of somewhere around $760 to $800 million. They estimated that their scrap and rework costs each year were around $24 million. They have 19 auditors. They have 150 employees spending time on dock control, and they have 26 supplier corrective actions per month. They're able to measure all these things. So based upon that information, when they looked at investing in a quality management system, what they found is that based on the savings, they were able to see a payback in less than 6 months. That meant that they were seeing an annual benefit of $665,000, pretty significant compared to the investment of that quality management system. And they had a three-year return on investment, or ROI, of north of 300%. This is the kind of information I think that a CFO loves to see, loves to understand. The finance department can get behind this kind of an investment based upon the value that we're seeing here. And when I looked at those 4 key areas that we talked about earlier, you can see how we were able to reduce the risk of noncompliance by 33%, the streamlining of operations by 34%. But and those we talked about a little bit more soft costs. And as Rick said, the hard costs where you're seeing reduction in scrap, reduction in inventory, and so forth, that was almost 20% in this case in terms of their cost of quality. And then finally, they were able to see a 14% increase in the revenue as well. So that's where some of that benefit came from. So they saw benefits across the board from just investing in a quality management system. That was really significant for this organization. A couple of other organizations that have seen benefit from investing in a quality management system has changed a little bit in terms of how we're going to look at this. So Wabtec, their GE Transportation is a part of Wabtec, and they make locomotives and trains and things like that. As they started to focus on quality, because they had some quality issues where they were having bad parts go into the field, and if you're in the transportation business and you're moving people and goods, having something that's a high quality system and a high quality product is really critical for them. They were able to see much better where their defects were occurring. They saw an increase of 75% in terms of that visibility, and that has led them to seeing 25% fewer unit defects. So they've seen an immediate reduction in the amount of problems that they've seen. They saw 35% reduction in the cost of quality programs. So they were seeing some significant value, and in fact, they've been able to measure the productivity gains over the past decade, and it's in the $12 million range right now. And every year, because of the use of a quality management system, that number goes up. So they continue to see improvement. They continue to see return on that investment year over year. And then another organization, Train Technologies, they make HVAC equipment. You might have their air conditioning unit inside your building, inside your home, but they have looked at their warranty costs. By having this higher quality product in place, having their higher quality products actually going into customers, they've seen warranty costs come down by more than $10 million. They've seen a reduction in scrap and rework, which means that higher quality end products are going into their customers' buildings. They've seen their warranty cost now, as I said, 70%. That $10 million is a 70% reduction in that initial warranty claims. They've seen cycle times improve by up to 87%. That means they're going to market faster. They're shipping higher quality products much faster into the market. So it's a win-win for their organization, top line and bottom line. And therefore they see the QMS, in this case, ETQ Reliance, as a data superhighway for making sure that all their teams know what's going on. They have that great visibility across the board, and they're able to react to any issues that come up much earlier in the process. So they're not seeing huge costs out in the field anymore. It's a really strong story that they've been able to leverage over the last number of years. So that's just some examples of where users of ETQ Reliance Quality Management System have seen a lot of value in making this investment. So at this point, Rick, we've seen some really good examples. We've seen some strong return on investment. I know that from your perspective, I got a couple of things that we could talk about here before we open it up for questions. So first thing is from your perspective, from a CFO's perspective, what is your perspective on investments? What are you measured on? How does that work?
Yeah, thanks, David. CFOs ultimately get measured by the financial performance of the company. And, ultimately it's whether they're creating value for their ultimate investors, whether that's, if they're owned in a public company, it's shareholders, or they're owned by a private equity company, whatever that means. It's about creating value. It's about improving the financial performance of the company. So to that end, what they need to do is they need to figure out what is the best way to deploy the capital resources of the company to achieve the best possible returns. How are we going to maximize the financial performance of the company, and how is that going to ultimately create value? And that's really what comes back to these business cases, because we said resources are limited, whether it be, financial resources or whether it's internal resources. And projects compete against each other. So what's important is to understand from a CFO's perspective, they're there to grow the business. They're there to improve the financial performance of the company and to create value. In order to do so, they understand they're going to have to make investments. So what they're searching for is, what is the best investment? What are things that fit with our strategy for the next 3 to 5 years that are going to provide us with the best return on our investment, as well as, some of the other things that we talked about in terms of just how do we improve our brand image? How do we go to market faster? How do we improve things like employee morale? So those are kind of things I think about, David, just kind of overall from what they're measured on and perspective on.
Okay. You're just not looking for a reason to say no then, right?
Yeah, certainly not. Actually, it's kind of the contrary. What they're looking for is, depending on the resources that they have available, where's the best place to invest? It's not a matter of saying no. It's a matter of where's the best place to invest. And
sure.
You have to understand there's competition for those resources.
Mm-hmm. So when you're looking at this competition for those resources, what do you prefer to see? Hard dollar savings, soft savings? What do you prefer to see there?
Well, frankly speaking, hard dollars are always the easiest to see and defend.
Mm-hmm.
When you start to get into soft savings, they're critical as well. Frankly, when you start to think of them, they're things like, we all know that inefficiencies cost money. Inefficiencies prevent us from working on other value add projects. So that's another thing that this ROI calculator tool that we've developed starts to help quantify. And what we've done is, we've surveyed many of our customers and we've come up with standards of, problem with soft costs is they're difficult to quantify. And we've come up with some pretty objective ways to quantify that. And, we've tended to be conservative in the manner that we do that, because typically when you take a business case to your CFO, they're going to want to, we talked about testing the assumptions. It's best to be conservative. And,
sure.
Especially when it comes to things like soft costs. So to me, they're both important. Hard costs are very obvious, easiest to prove, and kind of easiest to measure. Soft costs add up as well. And that's where this tool comes in, that we've developed this return on investment calculator.
Sure. And in fact, with the return on investment calculator, we also counsel our customers to be conservative in their approach. I mean, we've seen some numbers that come in at 5-10,000% our return on investment. That seems a little excessive. How would you react to something that came in at that kind of a high percentage? Or the flip side is, do you only look for the cheapest solution?
Yeah. So I mean, it's a good question. So I think we talked about it a little bit earlier. A lot of it, when a CFO is going to review a business case, they're going to assess it and try to just test the assumptions. And when something comes back and, frankly, if the output or the answer just doesn't seem believable, it's going to create some doubt about it. So it's important to go through and you measure them and to basically build your case on things that you either know are hard costs, or when it comes to soft costs, you tend to be conservative, because when you are defending them to the CFO, if you get in a point where you start getting picked apart, it'll start to raise doubt about your overall analysis. That's why we recommend being conservative. And then to your question about the cheapest solution, no, not necessarily that its cheapest solution is automatically the one that wins. We talked about this just a moment ago. They're going to want to buy a solution that provides the best return on their investment, and really one that helps them achieve their overall strategic objectives.
Sure. Now, a lot of what we've seen with our customers, and we see when we talk to other organizations out there, especially from the quality side, a lot of the quality professionals we deal with, they're excellent at what they do on a day-to-day basis, looking at quality. However, they don't buy software very often. They don't go to the finance department very often to say, I need to invest. How do you help them make a case to finance to actually make this investment in quality?
Yeah, so this is a great question. Now, first and foremost, start to say, whenever you're going to start a project that's going to require an investment, I think it's always critical to have an investment or an executive sponsor for your project. It's who is the person that's kind of driving this, who's going to be your kind of voice throughout the company. So, start with your executive sponsor. And then from there, what I recommend is that you're going to want to work directly with the budget owner, and so who basically is going to have the money from a budget standpoint to pay for this project, as well as IT, and last but certainly not least is the finance team, because the finance team is the one that you're going to partner with that's going to help you build the business case. So I certainly encourage you to work with your ETQ sales rep to leverage this ROI calculator that we've developed. It's very specific to the quality use case. So in a lot of times it'll trigger you to think of things you might not ordinarily think of, particularly in the soft cost area. It's definitely tailored towards the quality use case. And it's ultimately this business case that you need to present to the ultimate decision maker and the person with the budget authority, and then ultimately the CFO.
All right, great. So we're going to open it up for questions now. Please, as Dirk had said before, use the Zoom widget, the Q&A button, and type in your question. We have some that have already come in, but before we do the Q&A, I'm going to turn it over to Dirk to run a couple of poll questions.
Yeah, we'll throw up this first poll question here. Let me just launch that. You should see this coming up on your screen if you'll just take a little bit and answer that question. By the way, there are 2 poll questions. If you need a certificate of attendance, you will need to answer at least one of these. And we'll give you a few seconds to answer that. And actually, while that's going on, I got a question for Rick, and maybe for David as well. So you talk about soft savings. In my mind, I think a lot of this is a little bit of hand waving, right? Because isn't soft savings a lot of times kind of in the eye of the beholder? Want to take that, Rick?
I wouldn't, Dirk, I wouldn't necessarily call it in the eye of a beholder. Soft savings are things that, frankly, when you bring them up, I think that most people agree that there's savings there. The biggest issue with them is just our ability to measure them. And that's where it kind of gets a little bit gray. And those are the things that we've developed in this tool. And we've done that by basically, as David said, we've worked with several different companies to identify what these are, and then what is the best way for us to measure them and put a savings amount to them in a manner of, it's not just, first of all, it's not just a number. It's a number backed by kind of industry norms in these areas. This is what people have done. We've kind of, they've seen results in this manner, and we've done it in a conservative manner. So I think there's nobody that's going to debate them. Every time you do something, there's hard savings, there's soft savings. Everybody appreciates there's soft savings, but it's the ability to measure in a credible way the soft savings that you have to get over.
And let's share the our first question that we put up there. Has your company slowed investing due to economic conditions? That's kind of interesting results there.
Yeah, half the respondents have actually seen a slowdown in what they're doing. Kind of counterintuitive to the message we're giving here right now, because those investments can actually pay off.
Yeah, and I think honestly, this is what we go back to, and frankly, it's a little bit of a common playbook that companies go to. We talked about it: cost cutting, delaying projects, and things like that. And those are the things that while it's common and we've all seen it before, and it's kind of the typical playbook. What we're trying to do is kind of take the contrarian view and say, hey, this is a great time to invest. This is the time to be prepared when you're coming out of this the slowing down economy, recession, to be able to take advantage in the marketplace when things turn around. Because the one thing that is guaranteed, after a recession occurs, there's always a recovery. And typically, the companies that are best positioned coming out of the recessions are the companies that do well in the next economic boom cycle. So that's what you want to do. It's not surprising to me when I see the results. I think that's kind of the go-to thing companies do. I was quite pleased to see there is companies that are out there still investing because they're thinking about these things instead of doing the classic playbook. So I wasn't that surprised by that result, but hopefully today we can get people to think a little bit harder as to why this is the right time to invest.
I'm going to throw up another. We're just going to throw up another question here, another polling question, and I'll let you guys answer that at your leisure. But if you want to go ahead and take some questions now, David.
Okay, we will do that, and we do have a number of questions. I just let me move the poll window out of my way here on the screen. So we've had at the beginning. So these are questions. So Art submitted a question here, Rick. You used a term called, I think it was accretive. What does that mean?
Okay. Sorry, it's a good question. So accretive just means that it's generating a higher level, whatever you're measuring against, it's incremental. So I guess maybe I'd use the word incremental instead of accretive.
Okay. And then Mike wanted to know, how are these companies estimating real dollars for these savings? Probably in both the soft savings and the hard savings. How are they defining the savings prior to the investment?
Sure. Did you want me to take that one, David? Or
yeah, go for it.
Okay. Yeah. So typically the things we talked about, two different types. I mean, when it comes to the hard savings, they're quite measurable. As David talked about, it's scrap. And if you see scrap historically is run at 0.25% of total revenue, and scrap is now 0.1%. Those are hard savings because you're making scrap go away. Or if you put in a system, and let's just say that we automate a system, and it used to require 10 people to do a process, and now it's 8 people. Those are hard savings. So those are the types of things that you're seeing. Or if you see on the flip side that your revenue has gone up 10% as a result, those are things that are very measurable. Then on the flip side, things that are softer savings, these are the things that what we've done is we've gone out to people and we've said, these are the other areas in which you save. This kind of comes back to the point where, these things here tend to be a little bit more general. And then this is where we've designed this ROI tool that kind of helps you quantify that. So maybe, David, I'll flip that back over to you, because really those are the things that I think that you've been able to mine with that tool of what's the best way to measure it, but do it in a manner that's both conservative and believable.
Yeah, definitely. And in fact, when we look at the number of people, so for example, on that one example we had on the chemical manufacturer, they had 19 auditors, and we looked at how much time they spent on each audit. The organization did. They looked at how much time was being spent on an audit and how much time they were doing different tasks. And they were able to see where the QMS actually reduced the level of effort that they needed to spend on different tasks. And so that's how they measured from a softer savings, number of hours spent on specific tasks, and freeing up those auditors to do more strategic type activities to ensure that the audit went successfully. And I think that also goes to Rachel's question of what ongoing metrics do you focus on after the initial savings that a company sees from implementing a QMS? How do you show the ongoing value that's been implemented for several years? And I'll start there, and then Rick, you can jump in as well. But I'll use Train as an example. We talked about how they saw a reduction in cost. They have seen additional reductions in some of the costs, hard and soft savings, as they've used the QMS over a number of years. As they've gotten better, they measure the same tasks year over year. They can see that those tasks continue to improve in terms of turnaround time as they've gotten better and better at it. They also have made additional quality investments. So they just don't sit on, we've installed a quality management, we've got these 6 applications, we've got doc control, we've got training management, we've got CAPA, we've got non-conformance, and we're sitting there with just those things. They've looked at how do they continue to invest in quality to drive additional savings. So I think that part of where they've come from is they see they've seen the value in quality management, and they have actually found additional areas where they can use the quality management system to drive additional value. So I think it's not something that's static. You do it once and you're done, but it's something that you need. It's care and feeding, right? You need to continue to look at other areas where you can invest on an ongoing basis.
Sure. I agree with that, David. And then, it's not something that, as you implement the system, you kind of change the way overall that you're measuring. A lot of it just comes back to your original business case. What was your assumptions? What did you think the system was going to do in terms of providing you benefit, cost savings, both hard and soft? And then, these are investments that are multiple year investments. So typically then what you do is each year, a lot of times you're measuring the same thing. As David said, you might start to expand, you might do other things, then you layer that on. But kind of at the heart of the matter, you take your business case. This is what you expect to happen. That was your justification for going to spend this money. What are the results against that business case? Because if the business case said it warranted going out to spend that money, as long as you're achieving those results, then it was a good investment.
Okay, great. Barbara asked a question. It's not directly related to the investment in quality management, I think, but it's an adjunct, and this is about employee turnover and retirement. So are you seeing that as part of causing the slowdown in terms of feedback that we've heard from our customers and having an impact?
Certainly that's, frankly, it almost is the contrary. Those are areas that I would say we kind of talked about inflation hedges or just things like automation and things like that. And really what that does is also, to me, I think about it as a reason to invest, because that is a risk. As you lose employees, as people, retire, or just with the whole great resignation going on, to the extent that you're able to automate your process, what you then do is, it's not subject to inflation. It's not subject to people quit. So leaving the company. So I kind of view it in a different way. Some of those things, I think that's kind of all the more reason that you want to invest in systems and kind of have your systems overall they become kind of, I've heard the term inflation proof with things like that, but they're also, it helps you in terms of kind of this overall resignation proof them as well. I mean, obviously you can't automate everything, but the more we are able to automate from that sense, I think it helps protect you against that.
Okay. And following up on that question, we had another one come in on that topic. We've heard that as we're going to hit this recovery, and you said we're going to have a recovery, getting people back on board and having to retrain them. Do you see this investment now as a way to kind of make that recovery easier, faster?
Certainly. I mean, I think always as you're onboarding employees, I mean, having established processes and systems in place makes it easier as you're onboarding your employees. It makes it easier for you to ramp, to actually take advantage of increased opportunities as the economy begins to grow. So if I think about it, when you're making these investments, really what you're doing is putting foundational systems in place that are going to allow you to scale when the time comes. And it's also in future, it's going to kind of future-proof you and make you less susceptible to things like, you know, whether it's employee turnover, whether it's inflation, things like that. It keeps your cost base stable, automates processes, things like that. So that's the way I think about it.
Okay. I had one person ask if we could share the ROI calculator. What I would recommend is contact ETQ, work with one of our account executives, and they can walk you through that in a lot more detail. So I would highly recommend that.
The one other thing too, David, we should probably add is, at least what we've heard from many of our customers is, you know, when you have these state-of-the-art systems, really that's also a good way for companies to attract candidates.
Oh, sure. Yep.
When they come in and they see this versus, hey, this is all done and it's done manually, you know, and really it's all about kind of building and showing this culture of quality and making a commitment to quality because you're making these investments, as opposed to, you know, basically everything being manual.
Yep.
And frankly, if you do get into a downturn and you start cutting costs, you know, it just becomes harder and harder on these professionals. So I think it makes it a little bit more attractive to attract employees when you do have state-of-the-art.
Yeah, I know that we've heard from customers that they just have trouble hiring right now quality professionals and attractive candidates who could step in and do the job, and having a great quality management system, a state-of-the-art quality management system, is certainly a benefit to those folks coming on board. See, another question for you, Rick. How do you think about risk? That's not something we've talked about yet. We've talked about investments, we've talked about savings. We haven't talked about risk. How does that fit into the overall thought process in terms of making an investment?
Yeah. So really, we talked a little bit about, you know, I look at it as, what is the risk of not making an investment? You know, there's kind of risks of making an investment, and, you know, frankly, the risk is you don't achieve the business plan. If you go there and you present a business plan, and ultimately you don't achieve those numbers. So that's why it's important when you do this, you collectively work with your business owners, your finance team, your IT team, to get a most accurate business case you can. And the tool that we've built to help you, our ROI calculator, is very conservative, because the one thing you don't want to do is put a business case out there and then you're not able to hit it. And that is the one thing, when the CFO does look at it, they're going to really test your assumptions, because that is, you know, anybody can go out, they can manipulate a spreadsheet, make it look like it's going to have a great return, but that's exactly what, when it comes to final approval and the CFO is going to approve it, is they're testing the assumptions. And when they're testing the assumptions, it's not because they want to say no. What they're testing the assumptions is for, is they're trying to understand, what is the risk of me not making this number? So that's why they're doing that. And then on the flip side, I also look at it too, is there's a risk involved in not making an investment. We talked about that earlier as well. You know, there could be regulatory risk, the safety risk. You run the risk of, you might have some activities that are pretty manually intensive, and when people were resigning a lot, there's the risk of work not getting done as well. Then you also have risk of, boy, am I going to be able to replace this position because it's a highly manual position. Mm-hmm. And really the job itself is just keeping things up as opposed to taking this information and data and doing something with it. So I kind of think of risk from both ends. The risk of investing, which is why it's critical to have a good business case with all the owners kind of involved and signed off. And then there's also the risk of not doing it.
Sure. And in fact, when you think about risk and you think about investing and having a quality management system, think about, like we talked about with Wabtec a little bit, they had product that was going out the door that was not very good. And they've turned it around, and what that's done is it's made their brand really valuable. So you're looking at poor quality going out can really hurt your brand. Great quality going out can really help your brand. And so I think that's a key area that, because social media and the ways that we communicate these days and information flows, that information gets around very quickly. So it's hard to recover once you've got that bad reputation in the market, Another risk, I think that we've seen, and especially, part of where we're going with quality management is connecting quality management with quality control. And the last thing you want to do is stop the production line, right? You don't want to see manufacturing come to a halt while you've got quality problems. So that manufacturing stoppage is another key risk that you can start to avoid when you look at tools like a quality management system. Here's another question from Barbara. Because many are switching to automated systems, we see some of our customers extending this where one is required to enter their data to portals that they use to control and enter. Isn't this just passing the burden or time, money consuming efforts onto others? I don't know if I read that properly. Did that make sense, Rick?
I'm just rereading the question.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things when we say automated systems, and I think I understand what the question is it,
okay.
Is this kind of your classic case of, great, we automate this portion of the process, but the work that used to be done just kind of rolls downhill or uphill to somebody else that has to do it. And really the thought is, what we're trying to do is, is we kind of update really systems. The whole keys of these systems is kind of this digital automation that these things just happen automatically. It's not a matter of kind of passing the bug and somebody else does it. Just in this department, suddenly the work goes away for them. This is intended to be more of a holistic view. Efficiencies, and when we're creating these business cases, it's a holistic view of the company, and from a totality standpoint, what are the savings and the work going away? Because I do agree with that. You can't look at it as a microscope. You can't look at it as one department. And, the benefit needs to be the overall benefit to the company. And that's not, when we come to our system and what we're doing, and as we're kind of going through this digital updates here, it's not what we're doing.
Okay. Another question following up on that. Are there instances where going digital doesn't save time or money? I mean, could it be something that doesn't move the needle at all?
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, I think it would be hard to say that it doesn't save time. So doing things in a automated fashion, typically that's always going to save time. The money is, just the investment warranted. If it's, if you basically have to update one item manually per day, and it takes someone, 5 minutes to do that, and you have to spend, a certain threshold on the system and cost to maintain the system, the cost benefit may not necessarily be there in that case, but that would certainly come out in your business case. And that's the point of the business case, because you'll build a case that says we're going to invest in a system, and the system is going to say we're going to automate a process, and as a result of the process, these are where the places where cost reduction would be. And frankly, if it just, you know, I don't think anybody would disagree that automating processes is a good thing. You always want to do it, but there are some cases where it just doesn't justify it. You know, you're gonna have to spend more than it costs you to do it. And it's probably in situations where things are kind of ultra low volume.
Okay. Mike had a question here on, does ETQ have an ERP system that works with Reliance? And Mike, we do not sell ERP systems directly. We integrate with a broad range of systems, including ERP. We've done integrations with systems such as Epicor and SAP and others. So if you have an ERP or are looking to integrate with an ERP, then Reliance as a QMS integrates very, very well with those systems. And I think that's it for the questions that we have right now. I appreciate all the questions that everybody's asked. It's been great. And with that, Rick, thank you so much, and I'll turn it back over to Dirk.
Yeah, thanks, guys. David and Rick, nice job presenting what really can be kind of a tough topic, talking about finances and how you quantify that and try to sell that to your financial folks there at your company. So good job, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks. I mean, we find that a lot of the people we deal with on a day-to-day basis, a lot of the quality management professionals, they haven't done a lot of selling and going to the finance department to say we need to make an investment. So we're trying to help them, understand that process.
Yeah, exactly. And how to
well,
quantify that.
Thank you for letting me join and talk about a topic, frankly, that's near and dear to my heart. So.
being a CFO and all. All right. And thanks, obviously, to our audience for attending today. We appreciate that. You will be getting an email in about 24 hours with a link to a recording of this webinar. So keep your eyes open for that. It's going to be coming from Quality Digest. And I believe also ETQ will be sending out a PDF of the slides. So if you want to be able to review those as well, you'll be able to. So, and that will be coming from ETQ. So from all of us here at Quality Digest and ETQ, thanks for joining us. And we will see you at the next webinar. So long.
Thank you.